75,000 flowers picked by hand before sunrise, all to make a single pound of the most expensive spice on earth. But there is another flower, the same golden color. It grows in soil most crops refuse to touch, and it costs almost nothing. People were burned alive for selling it, and by the end of this video, you will know which flower it is, why it was buried, and how to grow it yourself for pennies. It comes from the stigma of a small purple crocus called Crocus sativus. Each flower produces exactly 3 red threads. 3. That is all you get. Workers in the fields of Khorasan province in Iran and the valleys of Kashmir crouch between endless rows of purple blossoms every October morning. They pinch each flower open by hand. They pull the crimson threads free before the midday heat destroys the volatile compounds inside. 75,000 flowers to yield a single pound of this flower, more than 200 hours of hand labor, and the plant itself is completely sterile. It cannot produce viable seeds. It cannot spread on its own. Every single crocus bulb in every field on Earth was divided and placed there by human hands, season after season, century after century. Today, Iran produces roughly 90% of the entire world's supply. Its market is valued at more than $1.4 billion annually. A single kilogram of high-grade sells for up to $5,000. Weight for weight, that puts it alongside gold. This is not just a cooking ingredient. For most of recorded history, this flower was treated like a controlled substance. Governments taxed it, armies fought over it, merchants guarded its supply chain with a ferocity that most people today cannot imagine. The spice is saffron. People were killed for this spice. In the 1300s, the Black Death swept across Europe and killed tens of millions. Demand for saffron-based medicines exploded because physicians believed the spice could treat plague symptoms, but the farmers who grew it were dying alongside their customers. Fields went unharvested, supply collapsed, prices climbed to levels that made saffron more valuable than most metals. The great Mediterranean trading powers of Venice and Genoa controlled the shipping lanes and squeezed every coin from the crisis. Saffron became more than a flavor, it became a weapon of commerce. In 1443, a large shipment of saffron bound for the merchants of Basel in Switzerland was intercepted and stolen by a group of noblemen. The theft was so devastating to the local economy that it triggered a 14-week armed conflict. Historians call it the Saffron War. Real armies mobilized over a spice. Real men died over a spice. As the trade expanded, so did the fraud. Merchants soaked saffron threads in honey to increase the weight. They mixed in dyed silk fibers. They crumbled dried marigold petals into the jars. Then they discovered something far more dangerous to the entire industry. The dried petals of one particular flower looked so convincingly like real saffron threads that even experienced traders in the busiest market stalls of Europe could not tell the difference. This flower became the single most common adulterant in the global saffron chain, and the people in power moved swiftly to destroy it. City authorities in Nuremberg passed the Saffron Code. Anyone caught adulterating saffron with cheaper substitutes would be fined, imprisoned, or executed. In 1444, one man in Nuremberg was roasted alive over a fire built from his own fraudulent saffron. 2 others were buried alive alongside their counterfeit merchandise. This was not food safety regulation. This was price protection. The entire luxury spice economy depended on a single condition. Nobody could be allowed to discover that a common flower growing in ordinary soil could produce the same golden color for free. That flower was safflower, Carthamus tinctorius, a thistle-like annual in the daisy family with bright orange-red blooms that grows 1 to 5 feet tall in dry fields, roadsides, and neglected farmland across 6 continents. You may have driven past it 100 times and never known what it was. It looks like a weed. It spreads like a weed. And that was precisely the problem for every saffron merchant who ever lived. because safflower was not some cheap counterfeit invented by medieval con artists. It was already ancient when the saffron trade began. Archaeologists have traced safflower cultivation back to the river valleys of Mesopotamia more than 4,500 years ago. That makes it one of the oldest deliberately grown crops in human history. When British archaeologist Howard Carter unsealed the tomb of Tutankhamun in Egypt in 1922, he found garlands of dried flowers resting alongside the golden sarcophagus. Chemical analysis confirmed those garlands contained safflower petals, placed there 33 centuries earlier by Egyptian priests who considered the flower sacred enough to accompany a pharaoh into the afterlife. Textile fragments from the Egyptian 12th dynasty, nearly 4,000 years old, were dyed using pigments extracted from safflower. The ancient Greeks recorded it on linear B clay tablets, carefully distinguishing between white safflower seed and red safflower petal. Each category was weighed separately and tracked for trade. Even the name encodes the truth. The Latin species name tinctorius means used for dyeing. The common English name safflower drifted over centuries from the Old French saffleur and the Arabic word for yellow, both rooted in the same linguistic family as the word saffron itself. The language preserved what the market tried to erase. The spice trade did not invent a substitute. It inherited a flower that was already ancient when saffron was still growing wild on the hillsides of Crete, and then it spent 500 years trying to make every kitchen on Earth forget it existed. Not every kitchen forgot. Western markets forgot. Everyone else kept cooking. In China, safflower is called Hong Hua red flower. Traditional Chinese medicine has prescribed it for centuries to promote blood circulation, ease joint pain, and support recovery after childbirth. Chinese hospitals still administer safflower-based preparations to stroke patients today. In South Korea, safflower seed powder is taken for bone health and to treat brittle bones. In Azerbaijan, dried safflower petals go into rich mutton soups. In Syria, they are folded into omelets and kibbeh. In the Alentejo province of Portugal, safflower leaves still color local artisan cheeses the same way they did generations ago. And here is the part that should stop you in your tracks. In Iran itself, the nation that produces 90% of the world's supply of saffron, farmers in the northern provinces also grow safflower. They know the difference. They use both. They cook with both. They stir it into rice without a second thought because the golden color in a home-cooked meal does not require $5,000 worth of crocus threads. Spanish colonists along the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico adopted safflower as their saffron substitute centuries ago. They called it azafran. An heirloom variety named Corrales azafran is still grown in New Mexican gardens and still cooked with in New Mexican kitchens to this day. Different continents, different centuries, different languages, same flower, same purpose. Saffron holds its value through one mechanism: scarcity. 3 threads per flower, 1 harvest per year. Picked by hand before sunrise. The labor is the price. The rarity is the brand. The entire model breaks apart the moment a backyard flower, one any gardener can scatter into dry soil, produces the same golden color in rice, soups, and bread for essentially nothing. The saffron industry responded the way every luxury market responds to a cheap alternative. It built walls. International grading standards define what counts as real saffron by measuring specific chemical compounds. Safflower contains none of those compounds. By official classification, it is not saffron. The standard does not measure usefulness in a kitchen. It does not measure the golden color it gives your rice. It does not measure whether your family can taste any difference in a home-cooked meal. It measures exclusivity, nothing more. Origin certifications, provenance labels, anti-adulteration enforcement, all framed as consumer protection. And yes, they do protect quality, but they also protect a price floor that benefits the exact same supply chain that burned people alive 6 centuries ago for offering a cheaper option. Meanwhile, safflower sits in bureaucratic silence. The United States Department of Agriculture classifies it as a minor crop. Research funding barely exists compared to wheat, corn, or soy. This is true despite 4,500 years of continuous cultivation across 6 continents. It is true despite documented medicinal properties studied in China, Korea, and Iran. It is true despite the fact that safflower once colored the burial garments of pharaohs. The modern food system took an ancient multi-purpose crop and reduced it to a single product, cooking oil. The petals, the dye, the medicine, the kitchen color, all stripped away. Safflower oil generates revenue for large agribusiness operations. Safflower petals generate nothing, and so the petals became invisible. This is not conspiracy, this is economics. A free substitute for a $5,000 per kilogram luxury product will always be suppressed by the systems that profit from the original. But the research that does exist confirms what the ancient world already knew. Safflower petals contain bioactive compounds that scientists have linked to cardiovascular protection, anti-inflammatory effects, and antioxidant activity. The seed oil is one of the richest plant sources of linoleic acid, an essential fatty acid the human body cannot manufacture on its own. Researchers in East Asia have studied the petals for neuroprotective potential, investigating how the compounds shield brain cells from oxidative stress. Search any scientific database for saffron and you will find tens of thousands of published papers. Funding flows freely because the market supports it. Search for safflower petal research and you will find a fraction. Most of the work comes from China, South Korea, and Iran. Western institutions produced almost nothing. The research gap mirrors the market gap perfectly. The flower that could put the golden color of saffron into every kitchen on Earth is studied least by the countries that spend the most importing saffron. Safflower grows in dry soil that would stress or kill most garden crops. Its taproot pushes 8 to 12 feet straight down into the earth. It reaches water that no tomato or herb or lettuce root could ever access. It handles poor fertility, it tolerates salt, it survives hard frost in its early rosette stage and temperatures above 100 degrees in a high summer. Plant the seeds directly into the ground after the last spring frost, 1 to 1.5 inches deep, 6 inches apart in rows or scattered into a raised bed. The plant does not require precision. 120 days from seed to harvest. No greenhouse needed. No irrigation system in most climates. No pesticide program. When the flower heads turn bright orange and red, cut them. Spread the petals on a clean cloth in the shade. Let them dry for 2 or 3 days. Store in a sealed glass jar away from sunlight. To cook with them, steep a pinch of dried petals in warm water or broth for about 10 minutes. They release a deep golden yellow, almost identical to what saffron produces. Use it in rice, in soups, in bread dough, in tea. Add a pinch of turmeric if you want richer color. A single plant produces dozens of flower heads across the growing season. One small garden bed, 5 feet by 5 feet, produces enough golden spice for an entire year of cooking. A seed packet costs $2 or $3. Let a few flower heads go to seed on the stalk at the end of the season, and the plant reseeds itself the following spring. One purchase becomes a permanent supply. No annual expense, no supply chain, no middleman standing between you and the color in your food. 75,000 flowers, hand-picked in the dark, dried, sorted, graded, certified, shipped across oceans, $5,000 a kilogram. Workers crouched in Iranian crocus fields every October pulling 3 crimson threads at a time from flowers that will never reproduce without them. Controlled, regulated, priced beyond the reach of ordinary kitchens. And meanwhile, this flower, same color, any soil, any garden, any climate where the sun shines and the rain is scarce. 4,500 years of unbroken use, buried by the one industry that had everything to lose, still growing in every dry field and forgotten garden bed on Earth. Oh, and if longevity fascinates you, my friend runs a channel called The Centenarian's Garden, all about blue zone secrets and what actually helps people live past 100. Go check them out, you won't regret it.